Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Andy Weir. Now you might be asking yourself who this might be. Well, on today's show, you're gonna find out.
What about the story?
Oh yes, we do have an FFM, and it does disappoint.
Well, okay then.
Martin Protective Service, Jim Martin speaking.
Hello, Martin. I can't hear you at all, so get this straight.
What?
This is the Del Cass secretary to Joe Gerard, the diamond merchant. They killed him, and I'm bound hand and foot.
Go on, I'm listening.
I heard you say something, but I can't make out what it was. I managed to push the receiver off with my chin, but I can't hold it to my ear.
Go ahead, I understand.
You know the address. 45 Fulton Place. Bring the police. I'll try to get free.
We'll be there right away. Goodbye.
Oh, thank heavens you're here, Mr. Martin.
And this is Lieutenant Garfield of the police. How do you do, Miss Cass? Jim, do you want to go look at the body? Let's get the story first. I couldn't get much on the phone. Tell us what happened, Miss Cass.
I will in a minute. I'm a little shaken. I just managed to get the rope off.
Now, please, Miss Cass, time is very important.
Mr. Garfield, I knew it would happen.
Why?
Well, he always carried a packet of diamonds in the inside pocket of his jacket.
Did they take it?
Yes.
When did it happen?
About 8, Mr. Gerard asked me to work late tonight. He was dictating a letter when I could hardly bear to think of it.
Go on, Miss Cass.
2 men, they walked in and they grabbed us both and they bound me up. I couldn't move.
What did they use to kill Gerard?
The metal stool. They hit him over the head because he struggled so.
Yes, go on.
The blood rushed from his veins. It was horrible.
And the diamonds?
He must have been dead or nearly dead. They opened his jacket. It was his new double-breasted blue suit, and they took the packet from his inner pocket.
And you phoned me right away?
Well, as soon as I could wriggle over to the desk and get the receiver off the hook.
Let's have a look at the body.
Oh, it was horrible. Just horrible.
Miss Cass, I thought you said they unbuttoned his jacket.
Well, they did. Then they buttoned it before they left.
Oh, I see. And it was a man and a woman?
No, 2 men. Their faces were covered, but I know they were men.
All right, Cass, come across. Where did you hide the diamonds?
What are you talking about?
Just this, Miss Cass. I arrest you for the murder of Joseph Gerard. Where did Adele Cass slip up in her murder and robbery? There are 2 clues. Do you know them? In a moment, Jim Martin and Lieutenant Garfield will tell us. But first...
Okay, yet again, I am stumped.
I believe that I have this one figured out.
Okay, what you thinking?
Did you notice that the detective asked if there was a woman involved?
Yes, I did. Was that the clue this time?
It was. There's actually a pretty easy answer. If you wear women's clothing, the buttons are on the left side of the shirt. However, if you wear men's shirts, the buttons line up on the right side.
How does that solve the crime?
Who buttoned the jacket?
Ah, I see.
Wrong. There may be hope for you yet.
Now, let's see if you're as observant as Jim Martin and Lieutenant Garfield.
You're crazy. Why, Mr. Martin himself heard me on the phone.
That was your first mistake, Miss Cass. If you were really bound hand and foot, you couldn't have dialed the Martin Protective Service. Your second error, Miss Cass, was insisting that 2 men committed the murder. Right, Martin?
That's absolutely right.
You see, Miss Cass, a man buttons a coat or jacket left side over right. A woman buttons it right over left. Joe Gerard's jacket was buttoned by a woman, right over left. And that woman, Miss Cass, was you.
Amazing. You were spot on. But why do women and men button differently?
It is a relic from the days when clothing was a lot more complicated. In the Victorian era, women wore fancy items and often enjoyed the luxury of being dressed by a servant. In that case, it was easier for the assistant to have the buttons on the left side.
Now that is amazing.
It truly is.
That you say?
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. On the show this time, we have a lot of me.
What does that mean?
Well, it means I created a lot of good stuff.
Still not getting it.
Do you know the story about the fox in the henhouse?
Yeah, not so much.
Well, I'm the fox.
I think he is trying to say that he, meaning wrong, created a lot of what we are going to hear today.
Exactly. That is spot on, BG. What we have is 3 stories about shadow encounters sent in by you guys.
Amazing.
A story recommended by Red Bill 792 about an object that's so amazing, it's untouchable.
Amazing.
Then we visit the year 1950, 1880, and then back to the 50s in an instant.
How is that even possible?
You'll just have to wait and see. Now, as to the rest of the show, well, we do have some special stuff. But first, let's listen to this from Audible. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle. Whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So what am I listening to? Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, narrated by Ray Porter. A lone astronaut must save the Earth from disaster in this incredible new science-based thriller from #1 New York best-selling author of The Martian. Now, I'm going to bring Sylvia back in here because, Sylvia, you have personal experience with Andy Weir yourself. You are a fan of his book, The Martian.
I am. I read omnivorously and voraciously, but I don't really tend to read science fiction. But the premise of The Martian was just so astounding that I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And it just sucked me in, and it was so interesting. I really enjoyed the way that the book was sciencey enough to make me feel smart while I was reading it, but not too much technical detail so that I felt dumb while I was reading it.
Yeah.
It was really, really well written, and I hugely enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to reading Project Hail Mary, too.
Well, a lone astronaut must save the Earth from disaster. That is right up his alley. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be honest right here and now. I have not listened to this book yet, but I am spending a credit on this guy. So in just a minute, I'm going to play a clip from the book. So we'll have that. What I loved about The Martian was each failure led to another failure, which led to another failure, which led to another failure, which he had to solve all these in order to fix the original problem and get back on track. Yes. And it was just so amazing to read these, I call them journal entries.
Yeah.
And that's just how the book is. And I'm hoping that Project Hail Mary is the same way. What do you say we listen to the clip?
Sure, that sounds good.
All right.
I have a confession to make my own self. I work at a library, as you know, and I was the one who put the cover on the library's copy of Project Hail Mary. So I snuck a little bit of time and I read the first few pages of the book as I was supposed to be working. But it was really, I didn't want to put it down. I was at work, so I had to. But yeah, you're just not sure what's going on. The main character's not sure what's going on, and he starts to get a little sense of it. And then, oh, well, no, we gotta wait to find out. So
Okay, let's play a clip from the book. The main character, Raylan Grace, has just awoken aboard his spaceship. He doesn't know it yet, but all of his crewmates are dead. His memory is gone, and there is an irritating computer voice talking to him.
What's 2 plus 2? Something about the question irritates me. I'm tired. I drift back to sleep. A few minutes pass, then I hear it again. What's 2 plus 2? The soft, feminine voice lacks emotion, and the pronunciation is identical to the previous time she said it. It's a computer. A computer is hassling me. I'm even more irritated now. I say. I'm surprised. I meant to say, leave me alone. A completely reasonable response, in my opinion, but I failed to speak. Incorrect, says the computer. What's 2 plus 2? Time for an experiment. I'll try to say hello. I say. Incorrect. What's 2 plus 2? What's going on? I want to find out, but I don't have much to work with. I can't see. I can't hear anything other than the computer. I can't even feel. No, that's not true. I feel something. I'm lying down. I'm on something soft. A bed. I think my eyes are closed. That's not so bad. All I have to do is open them. I try, but nothing happens. Why can't I open my eyes? Open. And open. Open, dang it. Ooh, I felt a wiggle that time. My eyelids moved. I felt it. Open. My eyelids creep up and blinding light sears my retinas. I say. I keep my eyes open with sheer force of will. Everything is white with shades of pain. Eye movement detected, my tormentor says. What's 2 plus 2? The whiteness lessens. My eyes are adjusting. I start to see shapes, but nothing sensible yet. Let's see. Can I move my hands? No. Feet? Also no. But I can move my mouth, right? I've been saying stuff. Not stuff that makes sense, but it's something. Incorrect. What's 2 plus 2? The shapes start to make sense. I'm in a bed. It's kind of oval-shaped. LED lights shine down on me. Cameras in the ceiling watch my every move. Creepy though that is, I'm much more concerned about the robot arms. The 2 brushed steel armatures hang from the ceiling. Each has an assortment of disturbingly penetration-looking tools where hands should be. Can't say I like the look of that. Oh, I say. Will that do? Incorrect. What's 2 plus 2? Dang it. I summon all my willpower and inner strength. Also, I'm starting to panic a little. Good. I use that too. 4, I finally say. Correct. Thank God. I can talk. Sort of. I breathe a sigh of relief. Wait. I just controlled my breathing. I take another breath, on purpose. My mouth is sore. My throat is sore, but it's my soreness. I have control. I'm wearing a breathing mask. It's tight to my face and connected to a hose that goes behind my head. Can I get up? No, but I can move my head a little. I look down at my body. I'm naked and connected to more tubes than I can count. There's one in each arm, one in each leg, one in my gentleman's equipment, and two that disappear under my thigh. I'm guessing one of them is up where the sun doesn't shine. That can't be good. Also, I'm covered with electrodes. The sensor-type stickers, like for an EKG, but they're all over the place. Well, at least they're only on my skin instead of jammed into me. Oh, I wheeze. I try again. Where am I?
All right, Sylvia, what's your reaction to that clip? For me, I'm getting chills because it does sound just like The Martian. It sounds fantastic. A computer hassling you, I love it.
That is what sucked me in, and I did not want to put the book down at that point, and it's going to be the same way with the audiobook. It's just, you can't wait to find out what happens next. And why is the computer hassling him?
Well, I guess we'll find out, huh?
Yeah.
We'll all find out together. I do know this. The main character's name is Raylan Grace, and he realizes that he has an impossible task that now confronts him. Alone in this tiny ship that has been coupled together by every government space agency on the planet and hurled into the depths of space, it's up to him to conquer an extinction-level event to our species. No pressure there, right?
Terrifying.
All right, well, this book is part scientific mystery, part dazzling interstellar journey, is a tale of discovery, speculation, and the survival of mankind. And you can have this book today. Here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook and 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This includes free access to the Audible Plus catalog, which is updated monthly with new titles. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can get Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Thank you, Audible. As you might have guessed, that Audible segment was from a previous show. In fact, it came from episode number 499, which aired in June of 2021. I have now listened to Project Hail Mary, and I have to tell you, it is every bit as good as it sounded way back then. The narration is nothing short of magical, and the story, well, the thing just has to be made into a motion picture, and the main character, Raylan Grace, has got to be played by Tom Hanks. The book has been out for about a year now, and guess what? The film rights have been picked up by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Drew Goddard is slated to adapt the book to film. He's the guy that wrote the script version of The Martian. However, actor Ryan Gosling plans to star as Grace in the film adaptation. I guess we can't have everything, but me, I can't wait for the film. Now, do yourself a favor and get this audiobook today. You will not regret having listened to Project Hail Mary. Head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Now, let's get to your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
Are you ready for another round of ghost stories? This time, all of them fit into the theme of shadow creatures. also known as the Shadow Man, Shadow Being, or Black Mass. It is the perception of a patch of darkness as a living being and interpreted as the presence of a spirit or other entity. A number of religions, legends, and belief systems describe shadowy spiritual beings, and these creatures have long been the staple of folklore and ghost stories. We begin our trek into this realm with this story from Freddie Fontaine, who lives in North Carolina. He has titled it, The Whole Shadow. It all started when I was around 17. We had just moved to North Carolina so that my parents could get a fresh start for all of us. Family issues back then. The house we had moved into was a beautiful, older Victorian-style house. It was quite run down, so my parents got an amazing deal on it. Maybe a little too good. It was close to public transit and across the road from an old folks' home. One evening, we had a terrible thunderstorm. Heavy rains and hail hit the area, and some of the rooms leaked through. My parents thought, just to be safe, that we'd all sleep as a family in the lounge room. Everything started off great. We all fell asleep easily, but when 2 a.m.ish rocked around, I heard our dogs barking and whimpering. I got up to check on them. I went to the back door to see what was frightening them. I was not prepared for what I saw. There was a dark figure on the stairs leading up to the outside deck. Unfortunately, back then, I was way too brave for my own good. I slowly walked to the stairs to get a better view of the figure. It took the shape of an elderly man. He just stood there staring at the dogs as I walked up a couple more steps. I tried to tell them that he wasn't supposed to be here, but he didn't respond. So I aggressively ran towards him, yelling something, only to have him turn and face me. What I saw stopped me in my tracks and sent me running back down the stairs. Just below his chest was a gaping hole. It looked just like a void of complete darkness, like someone had cut a perfect hole in him. Well, it's safe to say that this scared the life out of me. I remember he seemed to be trying to speak, but no words came out. I reached the bottom of the stairs and turned back to look at him again. He was gone. At this point, I was so scared that I ran back inside to wake my parents. I told them what had happened, but they kept telling me that it was just a dream. I know what I saw, and I've walked past that old house many times as an adult. I swear I get the same chill up and down my spine, and I always feel like I'm being watched. Freddie Fontaine, North Carolina. That is one scary story. It does raise a few questions. Did you have more experiences in that home? It sounds like you may have sold it and moved on. Did you move on because of the paranormal? Please let us know. And thank you for sharing your story with us. Our next shadow story comes from Sue Middleton of Washington. This story has so many paranormal elements. Sue has titled it, The Night with the Man with No Face. I originally posted this story on Reddit about a year ago. This happened back in 2017, and I was 11 years old. We were living in an old apartment building in Spokane. It was just me, my mom, and little sister. I've always been obsessed with the paranormal, and I would spend my time on YouTube listening to ghost stories and things like that. It was during the Halloween season, so we decided to go to Oktoberfest, which is something we do every year. We bought this tablecloth that had a printing of a Ouija board on it. I've always wanted one, but my mom was hesitant. But since this wasn't a real Ouija board, she said okay. I still planned to try and play with it anyway to see if I could summon anything, but I never got around to it, so we ended up hanging it in my room. A few months later, I decided to get up early and go into the living room and watch cartoons. It was still dark outside, and my mom and sister were asleep. All was well at first. Then I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw this black shadow figure dash from the kitchen into the hallway that led to our bedrooms. I instantly spun around and faced that direction where I saw the figure, but of course, there was nothing there. I shrugged it off and thought I could have just been seeing things in the dark. Fast forward again about a month later, and that's when things started to go down. My sister and I got home from school. My mom starts telling us that strange things were happening in our apartment, such as her thumb going randomly numb for no reason at all, the TV and radio messing up and becoming distorted, and our pet birds were freaking out like something was in the apartment. I wasn't really scared at first. In fact, I was excited. I've always dreamed of having a paranormal encounter, and now it was finally happening. But soon I would learn that the paranormal is no laughing matter. That evening, my mom said that she and my sister were going to take our dog Sophie on a walk. I said I wanted to stay behind to see if anything paranormal would happen, and my mom was okay with it. After that, I was left alone in our apartment, and I was just sitting there again watching the show Adventure Time on our TV. Suddenly, my walkie-talkie that was sitting right by me sprang to life, and a man's voice began talking from the other end. This scared the crap out of me, and I instantly ran outside to meet up with my mom and sister to tell them what had happened. She said it could have been on a channel with somebody else. Plus, we lived right next to the railroad, and sometimes there were workers up there. But that didn't make sense. First off, you could clearly see the railroad outside the living room window, and there was no one there. And my walkie-talkie, well, it had been shut off. So I have no idea how it could have just randomly turned on like that. When we got back, the TV was all distorted, and the birds were going crazy. That same evening, my sister ran out of her room. She said that she saw a faceless man standing in the room. But when we went to look, there was nothing there. She was too scared to go back, and frankly, I was starting to get a bit spooked as well. My mom was finally able to convince her everything was fine, and she finally was able to go to sleep. I woke up at 2 a.m. I was groggy, but I remember looking at the Ouija board tablecloth, and the yes and the no were blinking. I was freaked out. Whenever me or my sister would wake up at night, we would go to my mom's room and sleep there. I guess my sister had woken up before me because she was already there, so I went in and joined them. All three of us were awake and tried to get back to sleep. But that's when things got started. We could hear what sounded like footsteps in our house. We also had a huge shelf of movies in the living room. It sounded like someone was pulling them off the shelf. On top of this, we could hear pots and pans in the kitchens, and my walkie-talkie in the living room had that same man speaking through it. I don't know what that voice was saying, but I could clearly hear someone talking. This went on for some time, maybe an hour or so. The next morning, everything was back to normal. And that was the last time we heard those noises, and nothing else strange ever really happened. What was weird was, despite the noise, nothing seemed to be out of place. None of our movie cases were scattered or anything. But I knew it wasn't simply a dream, because my sister and Mom remember it too. Soon after, my mom threw the Ouija board tablecloth in the trash and refuses to buy anything else like it to this day. Sue Middleton, Spokane, Washington. Well, that is another freaky Shadow Man story. I do have to say, though, that your experience sounds more like poltergeist activity. These types of events start and stop with no rhyme or reason. I can't imagine how you must have felt that night, and I do thank you for sharing your story. Our last story for this time comes from Brian Vaines of New York. This one proves that not all stories have to be long to paint the scene. Brian has titled his story, Shadows Can Stab. Hello, Ron. I love the show and just had to contribute. A few years ago, I was homeless and living on the streets of New York. It was one of the scariest times in my life. I mostly had bad experiences with other people, but one night an event forced me to get my life right. I was walking in an alley. In this part of town, it was best to stay off the main streets at night. I was looking for a place to crash when I saw a movement on the wall. It looked like a shadow, but there was no light, so there was no reason for it to be there. I watched as it formed into some form of a creature. I could distinctly see a knife in its hand, and it was being pointed at me. The next thing I knew, I felt like I had been stabbed. I woke up the next morning at the base of that wall. My side was filled with what could only be described as bite marks. That day I enrolled in a rehabilitation project, and today I work as a drywaller. I have a one-room apartment, and I vow to never live on the streets again. Brian Vaines, New York, New York. All I can say, Brian, is I'm proud of you. I also feel bad for what you had to go through. Thank you for sharing your story and your life with us. It truly is amazing. Well, that's all I have for this time. If you have a story that you would like to share like Brian did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com. Click on the story submission banner, leave your story, give it a title, and please tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can.
As read by Amazing Stories, read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have a science fiction story sent to me by Red Bill 792. He said he loved the story and wanted me to read it. After checking to make sure that it was in the public domain, I thought, why not? And gave it a shot. It comes from the December 1960 issue of Analog magazine. Do you know who King Tantalus is? Hang around after the story, and I will tell you. Now, The Untouchable, written by Stephen A. Kallis, Jr. You can see it, you can watch it, but you mustn't touch. And what could be more frustrating when you need most violently to get your hands on it for just 1 second? The man finally entered the office of General George Carver's. As the door closed behind him, he saw the general, who sprang from his chair to greet him. "Max, you finally came." "Got here as soon as I could. I'd wager half my time was taken up by security checkpoints. You certainly are isolated here." "All of that," agreed the general. "Have a seat, won't you?" he asked, indicating a chair. His friend sank into it gratefully. "Now, what's this vital problem you called me about? You weren't too specific." "No," said Carvers, "I wasn't. This is a security matter, after a fashion. It's vitally important that we get technical help on this thing, and since you and I are friends, I was asked to call you in. Well, I'm afraid I'll have to make a story of it. Quite all right by me, but don't mind if I interject a question now and then. Mind if I smoke? Go right ahead, said Carvers, fumbling out a lighter. Just don't spill ashes on the rug. This all began on the 3rd of May. I was working on some top security stuff, and I had suddenly got the feeling of being watched. I know it seems silly with all the checkpoints that a potential spy would have to go through to get in here, but that's just how I felt. Several times I glanced around the office, but of course it was empty. I began to think it was my nerves. You are always a bit of a hypochondriac, observed his friend. Be that as it may, continued Garvers, it was the only explanation I had at the time. Either someone was watching me, which seemed impossible, or I was beginning to crack under the strain. Well, I put my papers away and tried to take on a short break. I was reaching into my drawer where I kept my magazine when, so help me, a man stepped out of the wall into my office. What? It seems if you just said a guy stepped out of the wall? That's just what I did say. Sounds crazy, but let me finish, will you? I'm not kidding, and I'll show you proof later if necessary. Anyway, this bird stepped straight out of the wall as if it had been a waterfall or something, but the wall itself was undamaged. The only proof that I had that they'd actually done it was the fact that the guy was standing in my office. But that was proof enough. To put it mildly, I was thunderstruck. After jumping to my feet, I could only stand there like an idiot. I was so shaken that I couldn't speak a word, but he spoke first. General Givers? He asked, just as if he'd run into me at a cocktail party or on the street. I told him he was correct and asked who he was and what he wanted, and how did he get into my office. He identified himself as Henry Bush and explained that he was acting on the behalf of a good friend of his, the late Dr. Hyman Duval. Have you ever heard of Duval, Max? His friend twisted his face in thought. Can't say I have offhand, but the name seems to ring a bell somewhere. Well, anyway, he said that Duval had perfected an invention of great national importance shortly before his death and asked Bush to deliver it to the government if anything should happen to him. Then Duval suddenly died of a heart attack. And what was this invention? Isn't it obvious? A machine that would enable a man to walk through walls, and Bush has no idea how the thing works other than the general explanation that Duval gave him. And Bush was poles apart from Duval. They were friends from college, but not because of professional interest. It seems they were both double-crossed by the same girl. Duval was a brilliant but obscure nuclear and radiation physicist. He was one of those once-in-a-lifetime fellas like Tesla. He was so shy that he didn't bring himself to anybody's attention save for a few papers he published in the smaller physical societies magazines. It was only because he inherited a considerable amount of money that he could do any kind of research whatsoever. I seem to remember a paper about wave propagation in one of the quarterlies. Quite unorthodox, as I recall, said Max. Could be, but anyway, about Bush. Bush majored in psychology at college, but took some special courses after he graduated and took a master's in English. He has written 2 novels and 3 collections of poems under various pen names. At the time of Duval's death, he was working on a libretto of an opera. He had no technical training unless you want to count a year of high school general science, so he wasn't too much help explaining how Duval's instruments worked. And just to make matters more juicy, Duvall kept no notes. He had total recall and a childlike fear of putting anything into writing that had not been experimentally verified. And this machine, how is it supposed to work? Garvers got up and began to pace. According to Bush, Duvall devised the instrument after stumbling into an entirely new branch of physics. This device of Duvall is a special case of a new theory of matter and energy. Matter is made up of subnuclear particles, electrons, protons, and the like. However, Duvall said that these particles are in turn made up of much smaller particles grouped together in an aggregate clouds. The size ratio of these particles to protons is somewhat like the ratio of an individual proton to a large star. They seem to be composed of tiny clots of energy from a fantastically complex energy system in which electromagnetism is but a small part. Each energy segment is represented by a different facet of each particle, and the arrangement of the individual particles to each other determines what superparticle they will form, such as an electron. Duvall called these subparticles LEMs. Bush says he was told that a field of a special nature could be generated as to make the individual LEMs in the particles of matter rotate in a special way that would introduce a polarization field, as Duvall called it. This field seems to be connected somehow with gravity, but Bush wasn't told how. The upshot is that the matter in the initial presence of the field is affected so that it is able to pass through ordinary matter. Hold on, interrupted Max. If a device could do that, then the user would immediately fall towards the center of the earth. Just you hold on. You didn't let me finish. A single plane of atoms at the base of the treated object is the point of contact. It remains partially unaffected because it is the closest to the gravistatic field center, which I guess is the Earth's center of attraction. This plane of semi-treated atoms can be forced through an object if it is moved horizontally, but its untreated aspect prevents the subject wearing the device from falling through the floor. Bush demonstrated this device to me, turning it on and scrolling through various objects in the room. Think of it. No soldier could be killed or held prisoner. And, now hang on, objected Max. Let's not run away with ourselves. He may have perfected a device that would enable a soldier to avoid capture, but there would certainly be other ways to kill him than by bullets. Let's see now. Suppose that the enemy shot a flamethrower at him. The burning materials might pass through him, but he would be cooked anyway. Or how about poison gas? As far as gas goes, I suppose a gas mask would be necessary. Bush doesn't know about the breathing mechanism, except that he had to take breaths. But as far as fire and radiation goes, the man's protected. If the radiation is either harmful by nature or by amount, the field merely reflects it. It's something called Lemeg's stress of the field that causes the phenomenon. That's why we need your help. Max scratched his head thoughtfully. I don't understand. Garvers looked pained. When Bush had finished his demonstration, he carelessly tossed the device on my desk. The thing skidded and, it hit my paperweight so that the switch was thrown on the device again. So now it's stuck in my desk and they're both untouchable. Go over to the desk and touch it, said Garvers dryly. His friend got up and ambled over to the desk. There he saw a small black box resting near a paperweight. Its toggle was in the on position, and it was lying on its side. He tried to pick the box up, but his hand slid effortlessly through it as if it was so much air. "Well," Max said. He passed his hand through the desk again. "Well, well. Are you sure that Bush told you everything?" "Bush? He honestly wants to help, and we've taken him through the mill, pentothal, scalpamine, and the like, hypnotism, and even a polygraph. We've dug that man deeper than we've ever dug anyone before." "Have you conducted any experiments on your own?" "Certainly. And that's what's so frustrating. We try to X-ray the thing, and we don't get a thing. We bombard it with every radiation we could think of, from radio to gamma, and it just reflected them. We can detect no radiation coming out of it. Magnetic fields don't affect it, nor do heat or cold. Nuclear particles are ignored by it. It just sits there thumbing its nose at us, and we can't even wait for it to run down. According to Bush, the power requirements of the thing are funny, and once the field is established, it takes no energy to maintain it, and collapsing power remains indefinitely until it's time to turn the machine off. But it's unreachable by any means that we have. It's pure frustration, and there's no way we can analyze it until we can handle it, so there's no way we can handle it until we can turn it off. And there's no way we can turn it off until we've analyzed it. If it were alive, I'd think it'd be laughing at us." "Do you have any ideas?" asked Garbers hopefully. "Nothing that would help the situation at present," said Max. "But do you remember the legend of King Tantalus?" "Slightly. What about it?" "Well, if he were here," said Max thoughtfully, "he'd sympathize." Well, how did I do? Did you enjoy the story? It ended abruptly with that reference to King Tantalus. Do you know the name? Tantalus was a figure from Greek mythology who was the rich but wicked king of Sipylus. For attempting to serve his own son at a feast with the gods, he was punished by Zeus to forever go thirsty and hungry in Hades, despite being stood in a pool of water and almost within reach of a fruit tree. Kind of like our mysterious device. The author of our story was Stephen A. Kallis, Jr. I was not able to find out much about him. I found 2 works to his credit, Captain Midnight, the wartime biography, and this story, The Untouchable. My guess is that this was not his real name, but I couldn't find any connection to any other author, living or dead. If you know the name, please let me know.
It seems as though the whole country is talking about the great 1950 Ford. Listen to what C.W. DeCandre, a resort owner in Daytona, Florida, one of more than 420,000 delighted new Ford owners, has to say about Ford station wagons.
Our resort has had nothing but Ford station wagons, and I'm convinced that the new 50 model is the best of all. It has the real passenger car comfort, which is important to our guests, and when you take out the rear seats, you have the perfect hauling vehicle. Tell you something else. I think the 50 Ford station wagon has a certain air about it that the others just can't match. It's so easy to keep new looking, too. Just a wash now and then, and you'd think we'd bought a new one.
Ford dealers hear praise like this every day, and they want you to get that fine Ford feel, too. They want you to stop in and test drive the Ford for 50. And while you're there, get the facts on Ford economy. You'll discover the new Ford is low in initial cost, high in resale value, thrifty on gas and oil, and inexpensive to maintain. Yes, first and last, the new Ford is designed to save you money. See it. Test drive it tomorrow.
The date is February 19th, 1880, and this is A Moment in Time. We take a step back to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and its then newspaper, the Star and Sentinel. We'll take a look at some clippings from the paper that day. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have not altered the content, and I read them to you just as they were published. From page 1 of our paper, we find this article. Never get out of temper with a barber. A gentleman not long since was sitting in a barber's chair trying to read the morning paper while having his hair cut. The barber, in the meantime, was worrying him with a recital of a long story about the barber's boy and the shoemaker's daughter at the Saturday night ball. A story which was strung out until forbearance ceased to be virtuous, when the man being clipped looked up somewhat annoyed and exclaimed impatiently, "Oh, cut it short." The barber did cut it short. When the man left the chair, he was as bald as a newborn baby. He wears a stocking cap in church now and is bothered to death by small boys who hand him bills of the theater where the can-can is danced. On the same page and over to the left, we find this interesting clipping. A woman, hearing a great deal about preserving autumn leaves, put up some, but afterward told a neighbor they're not fit to eat. It's going to take you a while to get that one. And finally, this news gem from page 2. Barn burnt. On Sunday evening, February 8th, the large barn of James McCorrick between Shippensburg and Fayetteville, Franklin County, was destroyed by fire, with contents including 10 head of cattle, 2 colts, 30 sheep, 10 bushels oats, 80 bushels of corn, 10 tons of hay, and valuable farm equipment supposed to have been set on fire. That does sound pretty bad. Now, these were exact cuts from the Star and Sentinel, and they were published on February 19th, 1880. By the way, that was a Thursday. I hope you enjoyed this moment in time.
I know all you young aviation fans and followers of Captain Midnight know a lot about flying and about flying terms. You know what it means, for instance, when an aviator says he's flying right on the beam. You know he means he's flying straight for his goal, exactly on his course. But let me ask you this. Are you right on the beam yourself? Are you getting where you want to go as fast as you can? Now, I'm talking about your health, your weight, your height. Are you getting stronger and huskier every day with more pep and ginger? Are you becoming more popular with your friends? Well, here's what thousands of smart young fellas and girls are doing to keep themselves headed in the right direction. They're drinking Ovaltine regularly, every day. You see, Ovaltine brings you vitamins and minerals and other things you need to keep yourself right on the beam. Food substances you often don't get enough of in ordinary meals. So if you want to keep racing along on your course, right on the beam like a high-speed plane, you just start drinking sweet chocolate-flavored Ovaltine 2 or 3 times a day. You'll like it. You'll really go for its taste. You'll say it's the most delicious way in the world to get the things you need to make yourself bigger and stronger and huskier. But now don't put it off. Get a jar of sweet chocolate-flavored Ovaltine and start drinking it right away. And say, fellas and girls, be sure to have pencil and paper ready right after tonight's adventure when we'll have another big secret squadron signal session.
Not so important times in history.
In this segment, we take a look at historical events that may otherwise go unnoticed. We look at history with a fish-eyed lens, giving a perspective that should provide no insight to anyone or any time. But it is historical, or hysterical, as the case may be. Join us now for this event in history. This falls under the category of strange events. Robert Liston, a surgeon in the early 1800s, performed a single operation with a 300% mortality rate. Instead of saving the patient, he managed to kill 3 people. How did this happen? Well, Liston was renowned for being one of the fastest surgeons alive, which at the time was a very good thing. Anesthesia as we know it now didn't exist, so patients were awake for the entire procedure, meaning the shorter it was, the better. Liston was performing a leg amputation, but he worked so fast that he accidentally cut off 2 fingers on his assistant's hand. Both the patient and the assistant died later of gangrene, most likely due to the saw being unclean. Now, what about that 3rd death? Well, doctors and other spectators would often watch these surgeries from the gallery, which was much more up close and personal than the medical galleries of today. During the procedure, Liston accidentally swiped near an elderly doctor with a blade, slicing the fabric of the doctor's suit coat. Thinking he had been cut open, the doctor went into shock and died of a subsequent heart attack. Thus, 3 people died during an operation that was meant to save 1 life. How about that? Dr. Liston was elected to a Fellow of the Royal Society in 1841. It was meant to be a reward for the amazing work he did throughout his career.
Have you tried Wheaties? They're whole wheat with all of the bran. Won't you try Wheaties? For wheat is the best food of man. They're crispy and crunchy the whole year through. The kiddies never tire of them, and neither will you. So just try Wheaties, the best breakfast food in the land.
That was episode number 540, and Freddie Fontaine, Sue Middleton, Brian Vaines, and Red Bill 792 helped out today. Thanks be to you guys. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.